Hello, welcome back to another breaking news update. My name is Jimmy Boyd, and you were watching Boyd News. I want to thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm back with another update coming out from the war between Russia and Ukraine, and I have a lot of huge news I'd like to brief you all on today. So, we're going to start off talking about the front line in eastern Ukraine, as there's been a lot of reports coming out on X over the last day or so, talking about the fact that Ukraine is making gains in the east. So check out this story on your screen. Ukraine is counterattacking, making gains in multiple areas in the east. Ukrainian troops are reportedly making gains along multiple areas of the front as Russian forces face a manpower shortage and poor command. Ukraine is exerting pressure on Russia. So, from what I'm hearing, multiple areas of the front line, the Pokrov's direction, also in Toretsk, those are both in the Donetsk region, as well as up in the Kupiansk direction and in Kharkiv region, we're hearing of Ukraine making gains over there as well. So it's interesting the timing of what we heard yesterday, as we do have some updates about the sharing of intelligence coming from the U.S. That the U.S. cuts off sharing intelligence right around the time that Ukraine starts counterattacking. I thought that was interesting. Maybe it's not related. And it's more likely just to kind of push Ukraine to start coming to the negotiating table, try to end this war with Russia. It could be that as well. But just something that I wanted to note was the timing there. So we are going to talk more about intelligence today as well, as there's some updates coming out from Europe as we have the European Emergency Summit going on right now, European Union Summit, and that's for Ukraine, an emergency summit being held in Brussels today. So I have some updates coming out from there as well. So we're going to start off talking about more of these gains that Ukraine is making in the east starting out. We also have a report today that last night in Kryvyi Rih, this is in Ukraine, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's hometown got hit by a ballistic missile last night. A hotel got directly slammed by this missile. We had dozens of people injured and several being killed. I think even some young boys were killed last night as well, which is really horrible to have to report that. But we'll talk about that as well. So let's go ahead and jump into the news, guys. So much to talk about today. We're going to try to get through this as quick as we can. There's a lot of news to cover. So we're going to start off here with Jay in Kiev. Ukrainian forces continue to push Russians back from Pokrovsk. Reminder, Russians lost around 15,000 trying to take this area. Bye-bye is what he says. So, yeah, so in the Donetsk region, we have the city of Pokrovsk, okay? It's a major transport and rail hub city for Ukraine. They've been trying to hold on to it. So far, they've been doing a pretty good job. The Russians have been getting very close to it. I do have better maps that I can show you guys, but Ukraine is counterattacking in multiple areas as Russia's been closing in there over the last few months. So take a look at this from Tendar. Ukrainian forces are retaking more and more villages around Pokrovsk. Russian channels report of problems in manpower and Russian glide bombs being jammed. Okay, that's something we talked a lot about over the last few weeks, is these glide bombs being jammed. Apparently, Ukraine is able to jam them and prevent them from being dropped all over the front line, which is also making it more difficult for Russia to attack. We've been hearing that upwards of 16 glide bombs are used just to strike one target. So that's a lot of wasted bombs, as many of these are being jammed and stopped from hitting their targets. It says here, together with reports coming from Toretsk, Chasiv Yar, Kupiansk, where Ukrainian forces are gradually pushing back Russian troops, this seems to not be a local outlier, but a general development. Okay, so multiple areas you can see here, even Chasiv Yar they're talking about today too. So we actually gave you guys an update about a week ago in the Pokrov's direction. Ukraine was mainly attacking these 2 points here in Pishin and Kotlin, if I'm saying that right. These 2 areas were attacked. Now Ukraine's opening up some new fronts, attacking in these areas. Udokne, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. Uspenivka and Lysivka. Okay, so these different areas, Ukraine is also counterattacking, and reportedly they've gained back all these towns near Pokrovsk when Russia had control of these previously. So somehow Ukraine has been able to carry out these counterattacks and push the Russians back in this area. And here's the town of Pokrovsk and Murderad that Russia's been trying to take over. Okay, and there's been a lot of talk that if Russia happens to take over this town, Pokrovsk, the Donetsk region could potentially collapse and Russia could gain it as a whole. So that's why we're seeing Ukraine doing everything they can right now to fight back against Russia and hold them back. So thought it was interesting. Again, Ukraine's opening up with all these new fronts now, counterattacking in the east. At the same time, now we've got the U.S. cutting off intelligence, okay? Now, also from Max 24, the situation in Toretsk. Several units of the Russian armed forces are under threat of encirclement. Okay, this actually came out yesterday. There's lots of talk about this western side of the city over here where the Ukrainians were counterattacking, and there's a good bunch of soldiers right here on the Russian side that essentially were cut off. I even have some maps to show you guys where Ukraine's pushing in like halfway through the city already. Okay, they are absolutely sweeping Turets very quickly, and this has been a back and forth battle for months now. We've seen Russia start to take it over, then Ukraine start to take it over, but right now Ukraine is pushing, I'd say, about halfway through the city, if not more. We've got more updates here, like this one from David D. Russia is now losing it big time on the battlefield. Just a little while ago, the entire city of Turets was under Russian control. Now Ukraine has recaptured most of it. The Russian unit being pushed back is the 150th Russian Division, a pre-war division that should be holding without falling back. Most of the red dots and the blue are Russians dying or being overrun. Why are not people not talking about this? Yeah, so, like I'm saying, Ukraine is pushing hard right now, okay? They are majorly counterattacking, and the Russians are not really making any gains. We haven't heard of really any significant gains from the Russians at all in probably maybe the last 2 to 3 months. There's been a few small gains, small towns here and there, but for the most part, the most significant attacks, in my opinion, are coming from Ukraine right now as we're starting to see this really unfold over the last week, but it's been more talked about probably over the last couple of days. So you can see here about half of the city right now, Ukraine has just been pummeling through it, and there's a possibility Russia could get pushed out of here very soon. We'll see what happens. All right, now we're going to move on to talk about some other updates here. We'll start talking about this intelligence, the sharing of intelligence that the U.S. Cut off yesterday, okay? So here's an update from Nexta. British Storm Shadow missiles have become useless for Ukraine without U.S. intelligence, according to Daily Mail, okay? This is pretty obvious. We heard yesterday that the UK reportedly was blocked also or banned from sharing intelligence, but I have some information today that looks like the UK still can share intelligence, so I don't know really what's going on there. But it says here British supplied Storm Shadow missiles are useless in Ukraine now. President Trump has blocked U.S. intelligence from being shared with allies. Okay, so yeah, it looks like Ukraine might not be able to use these. I'm kind of curious why they can't just use UK intelligence, considering these come from the UK. But looks like the US has something to do with the intelligence, controlling these Storm Shadow missiles when Ukraine launches these. So we may not see Ukraine using any Storm Shadow missiles for right now. Now from Anton Gerashenko, France and UK will keep providing intelligence to Ukraine to fill the gap left by the US. France is offering intelligence to Ukraine, French Defense Minister Sebastien Lecornu said on Thursday. We have intelligence resources that we use to help the Ukrainians, Lecornu told radio station France Inter. It has been suspended since yesterday afternoon. He added, referring to U.S. intelligence sharing with Ukraine, I think for our British friends who are in intelligence community with the United States, it is more complicated. According to Politico, the British are also prepared to fill the gap, in particular through their aerial electronic surveillance, but their intelligence capabilities cannot match those of the Americans. Okay, so it looks like Ukraine is going to struggle for a bit in terms of intelligence. Here's an intelligence plane from the UK. And so it looks like they're trying to find some ways to get around this. So France is opening up as well. They're willing to share some intelligence with Ukraine, but the U.S. has a lot to do with this. So it still might be difficult for them to get some intelligence, but looks like Europe is trying to do whatever they can to help out and fill the void there for Ukraine. Now from Anton Gerashenko, spy agencies around the world may limit their information sharing with the U.S. due to its reconciliatory approach to Russia, says NBC News today. Intelligence agencies among American allies include Five Eyes Spy Alliance, US, UK, New Zealand, Australia, and Canada. Israel and Saudi Arabia are concerned that the U.S. may reveal sensitive, confidential information to Moscow. The discussions on how this potential threat may be curbed are currently underway. All right, so here's that story coming out from NBC News today. As Trump pivots to Russia, allies weigh sharing less intel with U.S. Members of the so-called Five Eyes Spy Alliance, as well as Israeli and Saudi officials, fear the identities of foreign assets could inadvertently be shared with Moscow. Okay, so even some spy alliances around the world are worried about sharing information with the U.S. and also due to the U.S. pretty much partnering up with Russia right now. Some of these agencies are not willing to even want to share information with the U.S. anymore. So we're definitely going to see a great divide with not only private organizations but all these countries around the world, especially in Europe. There's a great divide right now between the US and Europe. So we're going to be seeing a lot of things changing moving forward in the future. Now, for Max 24, Ukraine is already working on alternative intelligence. If necessary, we will also receive it from Germany, according to Rustem Umerov, who's the defense minister for Ukraine. Ukraine has not yet received information regarding how access to intelligence will be limited. Okay, so even Germany thinking about potentially supplying intelligence to Ukraine as well. So that's the UK, France, and also Germany so far. So that's pretty good for Ukraine. They definitely get some help from Europe. Also, from the Ukrainian Review, Ukrainians are to blame for the fact that we have restricted their access to intelligence and stopped their support, according to Keith Kellogg. So, Keith Kellogg is the special envoy that U.S. President Trump appointed for Ukraine to try to end this war. And some statements here. Zelensky was warned that no one contradicts the U.S. president in the Oval Office, and he did not want to. The Istanbul agreements cannot be the basis for a peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia. We need something new. So, Kellogg coming out and basically saying it's all Ukraine's fault for the reason why the U.S. had to restrict access for intelligence. You guys can let me know what you think about that down below if you agree with that. Regardless, I think all this is a major push to make Ukraine come to the table with Russia and try to negotiate. Maybe Ukraine's not ready to do that yet, but the U.S. is definitely trying to fast track this and get Ukraine as quickly as possible to come to the table, agree on some sort of peace deal, whether it favors them or not, to end this war, okay? So that was a statement coming out from Kellogg today. Now we'll talk about this Russian strike in Kryvyi Rih today. From Brian Krasenstein, breaking: Russian President Vladimir Putin has reportedly launched a ballistic missile strike on a hotel filled with innocent civilians in Kryvyi Rih, Ukraine. This devastating attack comes just hours after Trump halted the sharing of intelligence with Ukraine, intel that may have directly impacted their defensive operations. Putin appears to have exploited this gap, using it as an opportunity to strike, and now innocent lives have been lost as a result. Trump is helping Putin kill innocent people. Stop this insanity. Well, something I will note is we've been seeing strikes like this even when Ukraine had intelligence from the U.S., so can't say for sure whether that's the result of this, but I'm sure, it is going to make it more difficult for Ukraine to detect these incoming missiles, possibly even trying to take them down. We know right now, too, that there was a story came out on yesterday on CNN that Ukraine is very short on Patriot missiles. So if they're short on Patriot missiles, then it's going to be very difficult for them to bring down any of these incoming missiles to their territory, especially these ballistic missiles. That's probably one of the few systems that can bring them down. So we're going to be seeing more strikes like this on Ukraine, especially in Kryvyi Rih, probably in Kostiantynivka, and also Odessa. These are probably the three major areas. Also Sumy being hit the most by missiles and bombs, okay? Now from Astra, 3 killed, 31 injured in Russian strike on Kryvyi Rih last night. A child is among the wounded. Most of the injured have been hospitalized, with 14 in serious condition. In addition to the hotel, 14 apartment buildings were damaged. Rescue teams are still clearing the debris. So this was an all-night operation where they had to try to rescue people. Look at that, 31 injured, and these numbers just kept climbing and changing all kinds. 14 in serious condition. We even had children, young teens also being harmed in this attack last night. So it was a Russian ballistic missile directly striking this hotel. And look how beautiful it was before it was destroyed by that missile. Very sad, guys. And take a look at this also from Ukrainian Review. In Kryvyi Rih, a direct ballistic missile strike on a civilian infrastructure facility. The first wounded are already in the hospital and operating room. There may be people under the rubble. So here's just a quick video, guys, 4 seconds long. You're going to see this missile that just exploded. Someone caught it on camera. All right, so I let that roll with sound a couple times, so it's since it's such a short video, but we can see this was that ballistic missile when it struck this hotel last night, okay? So pretty crazy video coming out from Ukraine. So we'll jump on to our next update now from Bliskovka. Search and rescue operations in Ukrainian city of Kryvyi Rih completed after Russian missile strike, says the regional military administration. The attack killed 4 people and injured 32 civilians, including a 13-year-old girl and a 17-year-old boy. Residential high-rise buildings, a hotel, a cultural institution, a post office, shops, and cars were damaged. I mean, look at the amount of civilian infrastructure being hit in Kryvyi Rih. This city has been hit so hard recently over the past probably 3 to 4 months. We reported here ballistic missiles, bombs being dropped here all the time in Kryvyi Rih. And here's a lot of the damage from last night in that hotel that was damaged as well. Okay, so very sad. We'll move on to some more updates now from Bliskovka. The Armed Forces of Ukraine launched high precision strikes on the command post of the 17th Tank Regiment of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation in Oleshki, the Kherson region. General Staff reported the occupier strong point in the Kursk region was also hit. Okay, so we had a strong point hit in Kursk, and also we had another command post. Okay, now in the Kherson region, which is down in southern Ukraine. Looks like Ukraine carried out another strike. Okay, we've been seeing a lot of this. Many command posts being located on the Russian side, and Ukraine is launching strikes and taking them out. Most of the time when we hear this, it's over in the Kursk region. But now in the Kherson region, we have another command post that was hit overnight. Now for Max 24, advanced attack drones for Ukraine and new deal struck by UK government and Anduril, UK. New contracts totaling nearly £30 million and backed by the International Fund for Ukraine will result in Anduril, UK supplying cutting-edge Altius 600-meter and Altius 700-meter drones known as loitering munitions that are designed to monitor an area before striking targets that enter it. Thought this is an interesting type of drone. Take a look at this. So advanced attack drones for Ukraine and new deal struck by UK government and Anduril UK. Ukraine's armed forces will be backed by more advanced attack drones to tackle Russian aggression in the Black Sea, following a deal struck by the UK government and an Anglo-American defense tech company. So from what I understand, I believe this drone could just basically hover around an area for a little while before it decides to strike a target. Instead of just kind of flying through Ukraine, flying into Russian territory, and then striking, it can actually hover, I'm assuming, in certain areas, and it says loitering munition. It'll monitor an area before it hits a target. So I thought that's pretty cool. That's an interesting way to develop a drone instead of just being a linear drone that just flies from one area to another and just strikes. This thing could actually probably hover for a little bit before taking out a target, is what I understand there. So that's interesting. Now for Max 24, the U.S. is trying to push Ukraine into negotiations to resolve the war by limiting its support, Kellogg said. This is a way to move forward. It is a coercive function to realize that we want to move to peace talks to a peace agreement. So that's kind of what I mentioned to you guys earlier. That seems like the U.S. strategy right now is to just start slowly pulling support for Ukraine, squeezing the chokehold on Ukraine right now, making it more difficult for them to continue fighting. So that way they'll be like, okay, we can't really fight anymore. We're being kicked out of this fight. So we're going to have to come to the table and agree to some sort of peace negotiation with Russia is kind of the way I see it. That's what Kellogg stated today. Now from Nexta, Zelensky accused the U.S. of destroying the world order. Ukraine's ambassador to the UK and former commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Valery Zelensky, stated that the United States is undermining the global order and causing doubts about the unity of the Western world. It is not just an axis of evil trying to revise the world order. The U.S. is destroying the world order. Now Washington is trying to delegate security matters to Europe without U.S. involvement, he said. Zelensky also expressed concerns about NATO's future, claiming that the alliance could cease to exist and that Russia's next step would be an attack on Europe. So he's got a point there. Take a look at this. U.S. destroying world order. Ukraine's ambassador to the U.K., Valery Zelensky, has accused the U.S. of destroying the world order in a speech at Chatham House. I don't know if it's Chatham. Chatham House has also warned that NATO could cease to exist and Russia will come for Europe next. I mean, do you guys think that's possible? First of all, do you think the U.S. is destroying the world order? And then if NATO falls apart, do you think that'll be the prime time for the Russians to attack? I mean, could we see Trump pull, the U.S. out of NATO sometime before he gets out of office in the next 4 years? That time frame would make sense, as we've been hearing somewhere between 2028 and 2030, Russia could be ready to attack Europe. So imagine if that were the case, if the U.S. pulled out of NATO and then, this war comes to an end, Russia's got a few years to build up their military, and then by 2028 to 2030, somewhere around there, Russia's ready to attack Europe. And if Europe's not ready for it, which is that's something they're working on right now, then they're going to be defenseless, is kind of the way I see it, right? So let me know what you guys think about that. All right, now from Volodymyr Zelensky, everyone must ensure that Russia, the sole source of this war, accepts the need to end it. This can be proved by two forms of silence: no attacks on energy and other civilian infrastructure, a truce for missiles, bombs, long-range drones, no military operations in the Black Sea. So this is a video coming out from the emergency summit today in Brussels, and Zelensky was shaking hands with all the EU leaders here while he was being greeted entering into the conference. So take a look at this.
The new Prime Minister of Belgium.
All right, so you can see here Zelensky appears to be well greeted at this meeting today. And there's not too much information coming out from here just yet. I'll probably have to do a separate video later talking about this if we get more information. But we do have one video coming out today in regards to this meeting. So from Anton Gerashenko, it is about damn time. President of the European Parliament, Roberta Metsola, on the need to scale up Europe's defense capabilities. Situation today is exactly the same as it was 3 years ago. Ukraine is fighting for Europe, and Europe needs to be hand in hand, lockstep with whoever is fighting for our security and values. Ukraine's security is Europe's security, okay? So the European Parliament president, her name is Roberta Metsola, makes a statement here about a minute and a half. Take a look at this.
I think I'll be a little bit more blunt than usual today, and our message on this day of a Special European Council on Defence is that it is about damn time. This is something that we have been asking for a long time, that the European Union, that Europe is capable of standing up on its own 2 feet. That's why we've been saying we need to scale up, we need to be prepared, we need to produce, and we need to protect. That is essentially what our citizens are asking from us. That is essentially what it will take for Europe to say that we are ready to put, finally, our money where our mouth is, on Ukraine. The situation today is exactly the same as it was 3 years ago. Ukraine is fighting for Europe, and Europe needs to be hand in hand, lockstep with whoever is fighting for our security, for our values. Ukraine's security is Europe's security. And today, more than ever, also with the president of the country, we will stand with him and will say, we are with you. But to do that, we need to do more. We need to make sure that even here we put our money where our mouth is, that we help financially, that we help militarily, and we're able to say that yes, what you are fighting is what we will be fighting for together. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, guys. So very big statement coming out from her, and we can see, Europe is definitely stepping up right now. There's a lot of headlines coming out of mainstream news from this conference today that Europe is just not messing around anymore. They are really going to start boosting defense spending. They're going to be spending a lot of money, potentially trillions, in the near future to boost their militaries and get ready for any potential conflict with Russia and make sure they're ready to defend themselves. So that was basically, for the most part, what I'm hearing coming out from this conference today. One more thing here also from Vicegrad 24, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk. Europe must enter into an arms race with Russia and win it. Okay, that was stated by him today also at this meeting. So let me know what you guys think about this. He's stating that Europe must enter into an arms race, okay, with Russia, and they need to make sure they're going to win. So again, we're going to see the European Union really boosting their defense spending and purchasing lots of weapons, building up their military capabilities, and also supporting Ukraine to the max is what we're going to be seeing here in the near future. And especially if this war doesn't come to an end right now, we're going to be seeing Ukraine getting boosted up big time in terms of their military support. Now for Max 24, according to NBC, the U.S. is considering changing NATO policy to only protect members that spend a certain percentage of their GDP on defense. Trump recently proposed that NATO countries spend at least 5% of their GDP on defense. So I think this is probably just another pressure point to put onto NATO members that are not spending enough on defense, as the U.S. has been complaining about that for a long time. That's something Trump says a lot, that many NATO members are not putting in their part. So that's most likely what this is about. But maybe this could also be a precursor to, in the future, saying, well, you know what? we're going to slowly start to not defending many alliance members. And maybe at some point, who knows, the U.S. may pull out of NATO. That could definitely happen at some point. Now for Max 24, French, I keep struggling to pronounce this name. I think it's Eutelsat, is preparing to replace Starlink in Ukraine and plans to send about 40,000 communication terminals. So we talked about this yesterday. This company, Eutelsat, they were coming out and saying that they're preparing to replace Starlink. Okay, so it looks like they're going to be sending about 40,000 of these communication terminals. As we heard recently that Elon Musk is being pressured right now to cut off Starlink for Ukraine. And if they didn't have that, that would make it even more difficult for them in terms of communications on the ground. So it looks like Europe is trying to find a way to get around that by using this French company right here. So that's some big news today. Also from Anton Gerashenko again, China's envoy to the EU, Liu She, called for Europe to be included in any peace negotiations between Russia and the U.S. on the war in Ukraine. It shouldn't just be decided by the U.S. and Russia alone, especially since Europe has expressed significant concerns feeling that such diplomatic maneuvers sideline their position, he said. He also called on European allies to compare Trump's policy towards Europe's with China, saying China's diplomatic approach emphasizes peace, friendship, goodwill, and win-win cooperation. So kind of have to agree with this to an extent. I definitely think Europe should be involved. I mean, this war is happening right on Europe's doorstep. So I feel like Europe should be more heavily involved in this, not so much the US, but we know Trump is really trying to take over the negotiations here and in some ways even push Europe out of the way and just try to negotiate with Russia alone. So we'll see how things go as we move forward, but there hasn't really been too much in terms of negotiations. It's mainly just been between Russia and the US, okay? So huge update today. Now also from Nexta, breaking, the Trump administration plans to revoke the temporary legal status of approximately 240,000 Ukrainian refugees, Reuters reports. Thought that was pretty crazy today. So it looks like a lot of Ukrainian refugees are going to be losing their legal status. 240,000, that's quite a bit. And this is probably another push to get them to go back to Ukraine. But we were also hearing that a lot of refugees are probably going to be flowing into Europe here very soon. As the intelligence being cut off for Ukraine is going to make it more difficult for their army to fight. A lot of people might start to flee, maybe in fear that the Russian military or the Ukrainian military is going to struggle more on the front line. But from what we're hearing, for the most part, Ukraine is doing well on the front right now, okay? So moving on to another update from Nexta, Trump allies hold secret talks with Zelensky's political opponents. Trump envoys reportedly met with Yulia Tymoshenko, as well as key figures from Petro Poroshenko's party. The key topic of discussion was the possibility of holding presidential elections in Ukraine. Participants in the Kiev meetings presented themselves as people with whom the Americans would find common ground more easily than with Zelensky. So take a look at this report from Politico today. Top Trump allies hold secret talks with Zelensky's Ukrainian opponents as Washington ramps up its pressure on Zelensky to step aside as rivals are talking to Trump's team. So yeah, even the U.S. right now really trying to push Zelensky to resign and get out of the way. They want to try to put a political rival inside of power, inside of Ukraine. And this is just another story coming out today that the U.S. is really pushing hard to do that. So I'm not sure if we're going to see that soon, but we keep hearing about elections inside of Ukraine. Is Zelensky going to be replaced before this war even comes to an end? I'm sure it would be much easier if it was somebody else in power. Especially some of his political rivals. Maybe this war would come to an end much quicker, but who knows what's going to happen here. We'll see what happens in the future when it comes to elections. Also for Vice Grad 24, breaking, Norway announces it has decided to increase its aid for Ukraine this year from $3 billion to $8 billion. That is absolutely a huge increase, guys, from $3 billion to $8 billion. I mean, like I told you guys, we're going to be seeing massive amounts of increase in military support for Ukraine. And then also just the EU in general, they're going to be really boosting their defense capabilities and creating loans and opportunities for many European nations to start rebuilding their militaries and boosting up their defense capabilities. So we're going to be seeing a lot of reports like this. Expect many of them coming in the future. Now for Max 24, Ukraine and the U.S. have resumed work. We hope a meaningful meeting will take place next week, according to Zelensky. So he might have stated this today at the EU summit. The European Union emergency meeting, This could have been something that he stated today, but this was a big statement coming out that looks like the U.S. and Ukraine are going to start negotiating again very soon and start holding another meeting and talking more about maybe the minerals deal or who knows what's going to happen here. So expect more information on that in the coming days also. Now, a couple more things before we get you out of here from Bliskovka. Air Defense Forces of Ukraine destroyed 68 out of 112 Russian UAVs. 43 Russian imitator UAVs were lost locally without negative consequences. The Russians also attacked the Ukrainian city with 2 Iskander-M KN-23 ballistic missiles. So it looks like these were the missiles being used last night. Was an Iskander and a KN-23, which would have been a North Korean ballistic missile that was used to target Kryvyi Rih, most likely, because we know it was ballistic missiles that were fired, and 112 in total Russian UAVs going into Ukraine. So it looks like Ukraine destroyed a good majority of them coming into their territory last night. Final update of the day, Kyiv Independent reports these are the indicative estimates of Russia's combat losses as of March 6, according to the armed forces of Ukraine. All right, guys, so here we go. Last update, Russia's losses as of March 6, 1,140 troops, 7 AFVs, 94 vehicles and fuel tanks, 5 tanks, 21 artillery systems, 80 UAVs, and 2 anti-aircraft warfare systems. Okay, so once again, some of these numbers being much lower than we've seen recently. Troop numbers slightly lower than usual. We're usually seeing closer to like 1,300. So this time just around 1,100. Only 7 AFVs today and 94 vehicles. We've been seeing less than 100 vehicles 2 days in a row now. Usually we see 150 or more. And only 5 tanks again. I think yesterday, I forgot how many we had. I think it was only 1 tank or 2 tanks or something like that. So not too many tanks being destroyed on the Russian side and only 21 artillery systems. So I wonder if Russia's just not launching a lot of attacks right now. Maybe they're more on the defensive because right now we're seeing Ukraine launching so many counterattacks on the east right now that maybe that's why we're not seeing too many tanks being destroyed. If anything, maybe Ukraine is taking a lot of hits right now, losing a lot of their equipment because they're the ones on the offensive right now, when in reality, most of the time it's usually Russia attacking Ukraine. So not sure why we're seeing these numbers a lot lower. Maybe it has something to do with it being winter right now too. It's probably extremely cold, which tends to slow down wars, I guess, in some ways because of the extreme temperatures. But we have been seeing a lot of lower numbers recently. So lots of huge news coming out from this war today, guys. I want to thank you so much for tuning in for this update. But that's going to be it for today's update today. If you got something out of this, please smash that like button. Also, if you enjoy my content, please consider subscribing down below. Hit the notification bell. That way YouTube can notify you. With that, hope you all have a great day. Everybody take care and God bless. And we'll see you in the next one.